which is going to be a panel, which is going to be led by Lukas from the Protocol Labs team. So let me just get all set up here as they all come on stage. This is a panel I'm like really excited about because it's sort of an awesome opportunity to chat about the work that both Protocol Labs is doing, as well as all the awesome projects from our events as well. So this is a panel on kind of past hackathon winners and their kind of post-hackathon journey. So I know a lot of people here are starting their first hackathon journey, or some people are starting their nth hackathon journey, but really there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to use these 2.5 weeks to learn, build something, iterate, use all the resources that both from the summits and from the people that are going to be around you. And as David just says, more fun with more people around you. And it's been amazing to just see the amount of impact that that hackathons have had on these different projects coming to life. So we are joined by Lukas, who is kind of the point of command at Protocol Labs around just kind of orchestrating all of these hackathon outcomes. We're excited to have him leading this. Alec, as Kartik mentioned earlier, is the CEO of Valist. Valist is a project that came out of HackFS. And then we're also joined by Karen, who's working at who also started HyperDApp. So really exciting to have all three of you here. And I'm going to get out of the way so that Lukas can take over. So I'll encourage you all to turn on your cameras, and we'll get this show rolling.
Cool. Thanks so much, Jacob. Awesome. Cool. I'll kick it off. Thanks so much, Karen and Alec, for joining this panel. I'm super excited. I was just like hoping that we could use this panel to get people really excited about this hackathon, and then not just like what's going to happen during this hackathon, but also like all the potential that kind of comes after. So that's what I'm hoping that we can, spend the next 30 minutes or so talking about. For all the people watching, I'd also encourage them to kind of put their questions, right? Like, what are some of the things that you might be wondering about as you dive into this hackathon? And yeah, super nice to meet you, Alec and Karen. I'd love to kick it off by just kind of going around the room, maybe with a brief introduction. Karen, I'll start with you. Maybe tell everyone who you are and what you do at HyperDApp and what HyperDApp does. And then I would love for you to also talk about your relationship to hackathons, both the ETHGlobal one, HackFS maybe specifically, but also beyond. And then, right, like how many did you participate in? Did you win any? So yeah, let's start there. Over to you, Karen.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you, Lukas. So hi, everyone. My name is Karen. So I'm currently a co-founder at HyperDApp. So HyperDApp is a platform that's to enable anyone to instantly create and deploy front ends of decentralized applications. So what we are building is a platform and a tool that takes away all the complexities related to integrating Web3 interactions in the front end of dApps. That will make it really easy. So our tool is accessible to not only devs, but anyone who has some basic knowledge about smart contracts. And in terms of my experience with hackathons, so I was part of the HyperDApp. So we actually submitted our project to ETH Denver, a virtual hackathon at the end of March. So I was part of the team. And prior to that, I actually started my journey in Web3 with the Chainlink Spring Hackathon last year.
Cool, awesome. So we have like two hackathons in the tracker there. That's awesome.
Yeah, and one more interesting thing is Alec here and I are both alums of the TechYoung Accelerator. I think that's something that's notable, that's noteworthy.
Great, awesome. Yeah, I would love to talk about kind of your experience that kind of what happened after those hackathons, and we'll dive into those moments. Alec, over to you. Maybe also start with a brief intro about who you are and what you do with Valist and what problem you're solving with Valist and what your personal history has been with hackathons.
Sure. Yeah. Super awesome to be here. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm Alec, co-founder and CEO of Valist. And Valist is Web3 native software distribution. So a Web3 way to publish your apps, games, binaries, and even source code snapshots now. So Yeah, that's what we do. And then as far as experience with hackathons, actually, yeah, my co-founder and I used to participate in a lot of Web2 hackathons throughout college, but really there is seriously nothing like Web3 hackathons. It's really awesome, and ETHGlobal puts them on the best for sure. But yeah, we started at HackFS 2020, and basically I actually remember very vividly when Zach and I were signing up, we were like super excited, like, oh yeah, this is gonna be awesome. Yeah, we signed up, and then we did the hack. Valis was super basic at that point. But then yeah, we also once we did the finale presentation, Tachyon also reached out to us as well, and then that kind of started a whole other journey that, yeah, it's kind of its own deep dive that we can go to. So yeah.
Cool, awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. I love that we have kind of, I think the first HackFS in 2020 was probably, was it also virtual, or was it it was virtual? Okay, so I guess we're mostly, if we're talking about hackathons in the past few years, talking about a virtual experience, and HackFS is now virtual again too. I think ETH Denver earlier this year, Karen was live. I think I was there, but you said you participated virtual, so we'll get like a good scoop. That's perfect, because we are at a virtual hackathon. So I think a lot of the learnings will apply, or a lot of the lessons that you guys kind of took away. I'd love to kind of just go through that journey from basically start to finish, and we can kind of double click into it. And maybe the first thing is like, why did you guys decide to participate in a hackathon, right? Like you probably were doing other things, and you're like, hey, like I am going to spend the next week or weekend or weeks doing this thing. Like, what was it that motivated you to, dedicate your time here? Did somebody pull you in, or how did you learn about it? So yeah, just curious there. Karen, maybe you go first.
Yeah, sure. I think my experience may be really interesting, and I want to probably use it to inspire non-developers who are curious and are interested in getting into Web3. So let's just go back to around like springtime 2021. So at that time, I was about to leave my job, my position as head of data science at a Web2 startup, and I was looking for new ideas. And that's when I got to learn about the concepts about NFT and Web3. But I was totally a newbie and or like at that point. So, but then I have an idea about building a sort of a marketplace that empower photographers. So I was talking to, I got started with talking to some users and talking to some developer friends. And then I got in touch with someone, a friend of mine who works at Chainlink. And then he told me that, hey, you should join our Discord, and we have this hackathon going on. This is a great place to connect with developers. And that's how things started. So I think it's been a really incredible experience for me, for someone who comes from a non-dev background, because at that point, I have no idea about what Oracle was, what was like. I have a really basic knowledge about smart contracts. So it's been a really great experience in growing my knowledge base, and also got myself immersed into Web3 as a founder and a business operator from the very beginning.
Awesome. Let's double click into that a little bit. I'd be super curious, like, what are some of the things that you maybe would recommend to somebody with a similar background who's very new to this and new to Web3, and maybe even not an engineer? And welcome to all those who are not engineers, right? Like you're still in the right place. But I'm curious if there's I know, one or two things that you'd be like, hey, this is a good place. Like, I know there's a ginormous Discord happening, lots of conversations, lots of workshops. Like, what's a good place to start? Like, what would you say, for somebody who's very new, and try to help them orient?
I would say the first start is probably just the intros, or the finding a teammate channel on any hackathon Discord. So this is a great way to go through. I think this is really a great channel to just go through ideas that other people have and see if there are any synergies, and also synergies in terms of idea or synergies in terms of complementary skill sets. And then really be open to communicating with people, have DMs with people from different backgrounds, whether it's a backend developer, designer, or PM, or anyone. Yeah.
Cool. I think that's great advice. I mean, there are, right, like at the end of the day, like if you're kind of here on your own, or maybe with one other person, just do know that there are a lot of people like you, right? So you're kind of together alone for now, but like, yeah, would definitely encourage you to kind of connect with folks left and right, in maybe even the chat right now or something. Alec, maybe over to you for a second. How did you kind of get involved with hackathons? Why did you think that was a good use of your time, or what kind of inspired you to join it?
Yeah, certainly. So as I mentioned before, my co-founder and I, we're doing a few different hackathons, and really our motivations were always just trying to build something like just that creative, like, hey, let's see how much we could build in a shorter period of a time with the tools at hand. And we were always just really into like building MVPs of stuff. And we complement each other's skill sets really well. And so we've kind of always gone as a team, and then met so many new friends. With HackFS, I very specifically remember though, the motivation for applying for HackFS was actually like, hey, because we had been engineers in the space for a while, around 2016, doing like core dev stuff, wallet dev stuff, other things like that. And then we, had moved towards like helping write coding boot camps. And then we actually got to write the last third of this fintech course, and we got to write it all in Web3. So basically people would come in and learn fintech, and then at the end we would like basically try and convince them, hey, Web3 actually. But there was this like disconnect that, just like, hey, like, I feel like I'm in the community, but like, I don't know a whole lot of other Web3 devs besides our existing like circles, basically. And I very specifically remember when applying for HackFS, I was like, yeah, we could actually like build something that gets in front of all the right people, and we can make all the right friends, and like find and there was actually also like another motivation too of like, hey, maybe we could, we didn't think it would actually play out the way it did, but we're always putting things out there into the universe kind of thing, and just like when things come along, so it's like, hey, we realized, hey, we could actually build this out into something bigger. That's kind of the direction we took, but yeah, I think, yeah, I definitely remember having that conversation with Zach and being like, yeah, like this is gonna be sick, like it's ETHGlobal, like it's gonna be online, like everyone's gonna be like, it was just like Protocol Labs is sponsoring it with them, like, oh yeah, like it was just so exciting, and just, yeah, like that was definitely a big part of it. Yeah.
Cool, awesome, thanks so much. I love it, and you guys are almost like kind of coming from it from a different angle, right? Where Karen kind of joined, was like, hey, I'm exploring new opportunities. This might be a good way to kind of get some more exploration. And you were like, you came in with an idea, and we're like looking almost for a forum to showcase some of those ideas and get in front of the right people. And maybe Alec, for you, the question a little bit like, how did you go about like finding the right idea, right? Like finding a problem that like was worth tackling over a weekend or over the course of a few weeks. Like, how do you go about like, through your day-to-day work, and then like finding a problem and like, okay, that's a great hackathon problem to solve. Like, how do you go about, what would your recommendation be there for folks who are like, yeah, like that sounds like great, but like, what is the thing that I should be working on?
Yeah, no, that's a very good and also a very tough question at the same time. Probably what makes it so good. I think it's a lot of it honestly was a culmination of a long period of time of being around the problems in the space and realizing like, hey, we're still using Web 2 for everything on the distribution level, and just like, hey, can we just see what this looks like if we find a way to move binaries with IPFS and some version control with smart contract, just something super simple, proof of concept. Like, can we at least like move towards that direction? I was super into the idea of like well, still obviously, but Ethereum keys as like your identity, obviously, and then as a replacement for SSH and PGP keys in the form of auth. And I was really coming from like a security background. And so I would just say like, it just naturally was interesting because it cropped up multiple times and it's just like was this ironic thing. As far as recommendations, the only thing I could recommend is just introspect, think about what you really care about and what you're really interested in. And you will probably, there are probably things that you've come across multiple times, or maybe you came across once and you're like, hey, I might want to go explore that again. Because really, I mean, Zach and I have been doing a bunch of different projects. So it was kind of just iterating and not being attached to a single idea and just continuing to try things over and over and over again until we eventually stumbled upon something that has value in a broader sense. And so that's the best that I could recommend, is just keep trying things that you like and you have fun with. We always go into it having fun. Otherwise it's like, what's the point, right? Like, so yeah, I mean, definitely go into it having fun, just whatever you vibe with, whatever is interesting to you. And then obviously, like, you have to figure out the scope of how much time you have versus like the idea and how big it is. But you kind of get better at that over time too. So I would just say, like, keep going to hackathons and just keep doing this. You'll get better at that like feedback loop as well, of just like, hey, like, we built this, get better at it every time, kind of thing. Oh,
Well,
sorry, Siri.
your Siri activated.
But yeah, that's what I would say.
Cool, awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. I'd be super interested, maybe if we can spend a little later in our conversation on some of the biggest opportunities that you guys see, maybe from your vantage point right now with the problems that you're facing, but maybe also Web3 and who knows, the world in general, right? Like, what are some like problems worth addressing from your perspective? We'll look at that a little bit later too. I'd love to now kind of go beyond the hackathon, right? So now you're there, you've built your idea, you've met a couple of interesting people, you've had a chance to showcase what you've done, and what happened next. And I'd be almost like, I'd love to break it down into two components, which is like, one, like, what did you personally gain from it, right? In, I don't know, friendships or whatever it is, new connections, and then also professionally. And maybe those two things kind of blend a little bit. But yeah, like, maybe Karen, over to you with that question first. Like, what were some of the personal growth that you see, and then maybe also we'll maybe talk about the professional stuff in a second, but maybe let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So I think in terms on the social level, in terms of like what you can gain from hackathon, I think it goes far beyond just the people you collaborate with for this particular project. It can really go beyond that. For instance, those people that help you, that from different protocols, different platforms, those people could become really great partners and friends. For instance, when we started off our first project at the Chainlink Spring Hackathon. So even after the hackathon, when we continue to work on a product for our beta launch, I would say it really took a whole village to raise and launch a project. We got so much support from product managers, marketing team, the product team, and the engineering team from Chainlink. It was tremendous, yeah. And those support, those friendship, like, lasts forever, yeah. Yeah, even with our first project, our first client user, the creator that we work with for launch our project, came through an intro from the Chainlink team.
Well, awesome. That's great. And like having those anecdotes, I wonder, Alec, if you have like a moment or an anecdote that you remember where you're like, wow, that's maybe something that I didn't expect was gonna fall out of this, apart from, like, you were like ready to showcase your project, but like some, I don't know if there's anything that surprised you, like, wow, like I didn't know a hackathon would unlock this for me personally, or, in terms of friends or something like that. Does anything come to mind there?
Yeah, honestly, like I say this with no exaggeration. Like, I'm not saying this to be like super heartfelt or anything. This is straight up. Like, it actually changed the entire course of where my life was going. And like, just I felt like I got plugged into the community that I was like missing in a way, and just being around people with like-minded ideas, and not having to just like constantly prove, like with Web3 and crypto, especially a few years ago, it was just like, constantly battling this anti-narrative, and just like, kind of, it's like exhausting a little bit eventually when you're constantly trying to pitch the validity of what you're doing for a living almost. And it's like, interesting. Yeah. Whereas like, if you get plugged into people who are actually, believe the same things, and, have the same values, and just, it's just that. And then, when, shout out to Gabriel Anderson from Tachyon, when he emailed me, I was like, wow, this is okay. And I was like, from consensus, okay, like, what's up? This is very surprising. Like, I was surprised that we won, because it was such a global thing. And then I was surprised that so many people were watching that, and we had that idea, but you just never know. And I would say that that's the biggest thing, like, I've learned since, like, you never know who's going to do what, who knows what, like, it just, you never know. So just, keep, putting positivity out there, and just keep moving forward. And like, that's the biggest thing that, like, yeah, it definitely, there's so many things, like, I could keep going on about personal. I've met so many amazing friends in the space, professional, like, that's completely, entirely new levels of, opportunity that have opened up. And we just didn't, I mean, even with the VC afterwards, like, that wasn't even something that we considered as a possibility. I never grew up around that kind of mentality, and like people doing like friends and family rounds and stuff. Like, I never, like, that was never a thing I was exposed to. And so yeah, that was just like another unexpected thing post hackathon. Yeah.
Cool, awesome, thanks so much. I mean, I fully hear both of you on, like, I think a lot of these personal connections are what makes this, even for me, like, super rewarding, and engaging with folks, and finding community, and being challenged, right, to like bring your best, and also just like having fun together. I think that's super awesome. And I sometimes see, like, when you show up to an event, or you see it advertised somewhere, or people are trying, that's almost something that's not even talked about, but it's like once you actually show up, it's like, it turns out to be like the thing that actually makes this super rewarding. And like the website always has, like, hundreds of thousands of dollars in prizes to be won, and that's amazing. But like that alone is, like, after talking to a lot of kind of builders in the space, like, that's not actually what gets them here. Like, that's great, and that like gives you some runway to or reward, and that's obviously amazing and a key part of it. But the reason why people stick around is because of the relationships that they build. Cool. Alec, I'd love to kind of go into the Tachyon story and the Gabriel story a little bit more. So maybe, like, tell us a little bit what happened. So you pitched your project, and then you got a call after the hackathon, or got an email. Like, what happened, and like, what doors did that open for you?
Yeah, so something I learned is that, yeah, a lot of investors are watching these projects, and yeah, a lot of them, if you were at ETH New York, a lot of them were approaching projects afterward, and just, yeah, it's definitely so yeah, we did the finale live demo, which was awesome to do that as well. And yeah, so that was yeah, he emailed us shortly after the finale. I was like, hey, want to chat about it? And then we hopped on.
Maybe tell everyone who is Gabriel.
Sorry, yeah, of course.
No, just I know him. You know, hi, Gabriel.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
You're getting a lot of love here, but yeah, it'd be awesome.
Yeah, sorry about that. So Gabriel Anderson is the managing director of Tachyon. So Tachyon and Filecoin Launchpad Accelerator are protocol labs and consensus partnering together to do an accelerator where it's a 3-month, essentially a boot camp for startups, which is great coming off of writing boot camps for Web3. So that was a really awesome transition as well. But yeah, so it's essentially boot camps for startups. Gabriel is a really great, leader and just, multi-time entrepreneur, and just very great at candid feedback and just helping you really realize the potential of what you're building, as well as, flesh out some of the actual, the value propositions and how to actually get it ready for venture capital, which is an entirely other ball game, essentially. Honestly, yeah, it's like, and there's grants, there's bootstrapping stuff, and that's something my co-founder always did with other businesses. So that was definitely new. So yeah, he taught us a lot about that, and the rest of the Hackathon team, of course. But yeah.
Well, awesome. And Karen, you were in that program too. Can you maybe share some light on what happened in those 3 months? You came in with a hackathon project or a version of a hackathon project, or had you already developed it more? Yeah, just curious.
I'm a two-time alumni of TechYoung Accelerator. So I entered TechYoung a cohort last summer with the first project that sprung off from Chilling's Spring Hackathon, and then with HackFS this year we joined the latest cohort. Yeah. So I would say, just to add what Alec just said, it's a very different game from very different trajectory and game plan to build a hackathon project as opposed to building a venture backable business.
What are some of the major differences? I guess so what are the things that you focus on during a hackathon? What kind of questions are you trying to solve? And then when you switch,
a great start, even for when you work on a hackathon project, if you want to turn this into a viable business in the future, I think it's really helpful to hone down on the problem solution part at first. Because one thing we learned from my past experience that for some hackathon projects, we might be motivated to build some really innovative solutions with some existing technology first, without thinking through too much about what exactly the problem is and what exactly the addressable market is.
Cool. Awesome. Alec, from you, any other things to add there in terms of this is what we took to a hackathon, and then these are the things that we kind of tagged on to it during the course of those 3 months? What were some of your main focus areas there?
Definitely. Yeah. So I guess, just to touch on that a little bit, from a hackathon project and for venture capital, investors are definitely looking at, like Karen said, the market opportunity there. Some projects solve a very niche problem. Some projects solve a really awesome, some of them are really awesome solutions. But then if you zoom out and you look at the scope of the problems, certain things might be a $10 million market, $100 million market. They're looking for $1 billion plus markets that you could expand into, essentially. So that's a lot of the lens when you're looking at the business model and you're looking at how to scale that application up. And then, venture capital really likes, products that you build and then you could scale rapidly to many users, and then you can expand into other markets from there. Not all projects can do that, and not all, products are really meant for that level of scale. And, some businesses, are perfectly sustainable at a $10 million revenue, but it's going to take a whole different architecture almost to scale it out past that. Service businesses, for example, venture capital doesn't like to invest in that. That was a lot of things. So when framing the product, and then hackathons actually help a lot with the whole MVP and getting things out there quickly and iterating on your project and getting user feedback quickly. But then now you have to start focusing on that business model, how it actually scales, hiring, things like that. Actually getting investors interested. And then once you get the capital, obviously making it happen and scale from there. So yeah, there's a lot of things. There's a lot more to it than the code itself. Yeah.
I bet. I am Vuk, welcome. Like no problem for being late. I know EU air travel is crazy right now. I'm also scared. I'm flying from the US to Europe later tonight, and I'm like, oh, let's see if it works. But welcome. Vuk, we're just talking with Karen and Alec about kind of the things that you submit a hackathon project, and like, what do you start worrying about after, right? Like to turn a hackathon project into something that becomes investable from a VC perspective. And Alec and Karen were sharing kind of their perspective. I'd love to dive in one click deeper, and then Vuk, I'll let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're working on and what your relationship is with hackathons and how you took it kind of post hackathon. Alec and Karen, like one thing on this, like adding a lot of things, like you both strike me as like confident people and like know what you want, but it also like sounds to me like a very daunting thing to do, right? Like you're now in different kinds of rooms that you didn't maybe even sign up for. Kind of you kind of got pulled into it. You got an email. Like, what were some of the problems or like really like challenges? Like, hey, like I'm not prepared for this, or like some of the those kind of like difficulties that you ran into where like I'm flexing really outside of my comfort zone. Like what were some of the things that you had to invest most of your energy into kind of get comfortable around? Maybe Karen first.
I would say the first revelation is that after you build a project during hackathon and turn into a business, you need to figure out how to acquire your customers. Right, it depends on depending on your business model. For instance, for our first project, it's a B2, it's an NFT platform, so it's a B2B2C model. So you have to figure out how to acquire creators, artists in the first place, and then with that completed, you have to figure out, hey, where do you find the collectors, that the end customers that are going to purchase and acquire those artists NFT work. So this is one challenge, and then another challenge is for sure is, I think it's Alec must remember this from the TechYoung curriculum. Team risk is the top one risk for any business startup. So like building a project with some people, with some teammates within like a month, a span of 3 weeks or a month is relatively easy compared to building a sustainable business with some people over 1 year or 5 years down the road. So you have to figure out this dynamics of the team and really become friends and allies with your co-founders.
Awesome, thanks for sharing that. So getting real customers, getting real world feedback is a tough one, and then figuring out how you go from weekend team that's having some fun to a mix of professional and then personal relationships that can actually be sustained over some time. Alec, any other things to add there that were like big daunting things to you and that you had to invest some energy behind?
Yeah, lots of things, honestly. Yeah, and always learning every day, obviously. So I think the one of the biggest things are I mean, gosh, there were so many things from just coming as an engineer into growing as like a product person, just as a leader and things like that in general. They're definitely, or just with talking to investors, understanding what investors want, and what your customers want, how to align them all up. And then just there's a lot of different spinning plates. And I would say the biggest one of the best pieces of advice we got was from Juan Benet, actually, he just said one of the best things you could do is just figure out how to learn as quickly as you can and to increase your rate of learning. That I think covers like so many things. It's like such a meta way of thinking about it that I think it covers all the things where it's like, as long as you're increasing your rate of learning at any given thing, because you're going to have to do it all anyway. You're going to have to figure it out on all different accounts. Like you're just going to have to do it. So you're just going to have to figure out how quickly you can do it, find the resources and figure out how to iterate on that as quickly as possible. So that was the biggest takeaway. But yeah, I mean, it was the most daunting thing to me was the first time I saw the numbers in the bank account that were higher than any numbers that I've ever seen. And then the realization of, oh, wait, yeah, we're responsible for that. Obviously we knew that, and you always tell yourself and going in, but you never really know until, you're strapped in and that's it. So, that definitely took a while to get used to that external pressure, but you get used to that too. So, and then now you embrace it, and now it's a very strong drive forward. So it's like, yeah, you just keep embracing, keep learning and adapting. Yeah, because it is going to be challenging on all fronts for sure.
Awesome, cool. Thanks for sharing that. So just like a whole new burden of responsibility, both kind of like managing a budget, making choices between how you prioritize your time, how you prioritize other people's time. Super cool insights. Thanks so much. I love this. This is super interesting to hear all this. Vuk, I'd like to kick it over to you. Maybe just briefly introduce yourself, what you kind of do, what you work on, and then talk a little bit about your history with hackathons and how that was kind of an entry point or wasn't an entry point for what you're doing today.
Sure. So my name is Vuk. I'm currently working on Filecoin. Filecoin is a startup working on infrastructure for storage providers. So we focus on tooling that help storage providers be good miners. This includes doing storage, but it also includes doing computing over storage. And we're hoping to build infrastructure that will allow computing over data, which is pretty challenging right now. But there are many pieces that are being glued, and we have a chance of actually making this possible in the next couple of years. I got into hackathons back in 2018. Actually, this was the way I got in actually coding in Web3. Like previously to that, I was doing a bunch of mining back in 2013, but I don't think that was kind of Web3. It was more like you have a computer not doing anything. Let's try to like figure out where that computer could be doing something, and then that turned out to be like 10 computers, not one. But yeah, like at the end of the day, it was not like really Web3 happening back then. It was just doing some script mining that is kind of pointless. Hopefully today we'll be able to do computing jobs in a similar way back then, as I was trying to do like something useful with my computer. Maybe in the next couple of months, I'm going to be able to do something useful with the computing network that we're building. And hopefully we can allow people to kind of crowdsource computing resources and allow like very large computational jobs to be executed on that network. Also, a few points on hackathons. It was kind of unique in my case because it was back in 2018 in the Ethereum ecosystem. So that was a very great experience for me because I learned how communities form, how you actually go out and show up and show people what you're building on. And actually, we kind of use those opportunities to like also show new features of the products. And we were kind of trying to leverage the hackathons to actually build the new features. So we go there with some ideas. We know what we want to solve, and we use the hackathon to actually push out the feature. That gives us like instant feedback because we have like a bunch of people that we need to present that to. And we also get instant users, especially back then because it was very scarce in terms of like infrastructure, and like dev tools were not really that used. So we were focused on actually like trying to build those tools and have also developers try to use them right on the hackathon, and then try to pitch that to judges and win. I think we are in a similar moment in the Filecoin and IPFS ecosystems because like storage is much slower in terms of innovation compared to like Ethereum, mainly because it is much higher. And we are now at a point where things are becoming possible. And I think like we are in a similar situation as I was back in 2018. First of all, because we are in a bear market. So like most people will be actually listening to you when you are building something. It's not just going to be hype. It's going to be people trying to actually understand what you're building and trying to use that. And a lot more people will be getting in that want to build rather than people that want to sell, which is also very important for our ecosystem to evolve. And for anyone starting now, I think it's a preferred moment to actually build things, see how the community is going to evolve. The Filecoin and IPFS communities are still very, very small, even though like a lot of work was done. The Ethereum ecosystem is not that small anymore. Like if you want to get in that ecosystem, like probably no one is going to notice that. If you get in the IPFS and Filecoin ecosystem, you can build a lot of traction very fast if you build the right things, and you can get a lot of exposure. And Lukas is probably the best person to help you out with that if you succeed with this hackathon, and if you get some prizes, or if you win on the hackathon, or you even pitch to Lukas and Lukas thinks that it's a good idea. A few things can happen from there.
I love good ideas, and it's Lukas plus a whole community of people, right, that are that I work with, that are invested in helping builders succeed, right? Like that is literally my job description. So yeah, like I try to make the connection, try to make those connections possible, and like facilitate those meetings. I have one quick question, Vuk, on this, like one specific element that you described, which is, first of all, I love this idea of like taking a strategic look and like almost like a step back and be like, what's the best place to jump in, right? And then like finding the ecosystem that actually has the highest almost like return on investment, where you're like, this actually has I get the most impact for my time or something. It's not, you're not spending money, you're spending a time, which is even more valuable, I think. You said one thing that I'd love to double click on, which is that you used hackathons almost as a tool to get feedback from people that you're building. Describe how that works. So you're building a feature at a hackathon, and then what happens, like on the last day, or I don't know, you just walk around and chat people up and like, hey, what do you think? Or is that after the hackathon? Just curious, like to how you get the feedback, or you just pester everyone and annoy them until they tell you what they think.
Yeah, hopefully you do it before, so you don't build something stupid. I mean, it was much easier back in 2010 because like it was a physical event. Now you would need to like be on Discord and ping people there, and Discord is a bit busy, so might be hard to get feedback before. But actually, it's very useful to like get it even before you actually start thinking about the hackathon. Like try to think about the things that you would wanna do in your life, like what are you missing, like in terms of like social networking. Like social networking is kind of bad right now. Like most of the data is owned by a few companies, and you're not kind of using the same data like with different apps, which is stupid. Like why don't you try to fix that? And there are many tools right now available to you, like Tableland, like a bunch of the other tools that the Textile team built, like that you can actually use to like show some apps that are interoperable and that can actually share data between them. And maybe you build like the same app, but then you have like two algorithms that the apps are using for actually like showing like feeds of people's photos and so on. So, but then what you do is you have that idea and you go to people and you ask them whether they would want to use something like that. And then you try to also to be to like ask very open questions, like what are the things that are not really working for them in terms of social networking and so on. And you try to get to something that really makes sense, and then you try to build it. Now, in our case, it was DevTools mainly because we were kind of in the early phases on the Ethereum ecosystem. So like it's not like many use cases were being built back in 2018 on Ethereum. So we were trying to build tools that would help developers build better tools. By the way, those are like the tools that are also required in the Ethereum in the Filecoin ecosystem right now. Like there are many tools that need to be built that would allow developers maybe at some point to actually have interoperability, maybe have some of the other characteristics of Web3 that we are seeing right now in DeFi, but we are not seeing with data. So maybe like function, so like function addressable computation, for example, like try using Fluence, try combining multiple workloads that would otherwise be very difficult to glue on a cloud provider, because you, for example, with Lambda functions, it's very hard for you to actually like have communication through the content, but on IPFS through content addressing and function addressing with the Fluence logic, it's not that hard, but very few people have actually tried that. So those are all like avenues that you could adventure and potentially learn a bunch of things on. Also zooming out and maybe also thinking about where do you position yourself for future growth. If you think about what happened in the Ethereum ecosystem, we got innovation only in a relatively small part of our lives, which is finance. But if you zoom in on Filecoin and IPFS, probably like most of the things that you're interacting with your phone or computer will need to be changed. And those are many more than what we have changed on the finance side. So thinking about all of those things that you can actually improve with Filecoin and IPFS, so would definitely help you think about like the ideas that you wanna build.
Cool, thanks so much for that perspective. I think there's a ton here, right? Like if making the right choices when evaluating what to build on, how to even find the right ecosystem. I also love the point kind of around front loading as much of the feedback as possible. And I bet that would even help, you know, to Karen's point from earlier, when you're actually then going into this world where you're now trying to engage real customers, you already have a version of that, and that makes it a lot more compelling to, you know, follow on opportunities. Alec, Karen, looking a little bit at time, I'd love to close out with kind of what Vuk already started, which is like, what are some of the opportunities that you see? Like, what do you think holds the most potential? And I'll try to force you to limit it to really like the top one or top two avenues that you believe people should pursue, be it like, you know, the type of event, right? Participate in a hackathon, the ecosystem, right? Ethereum versus something else, or the Filecoin ecosystem, or, you know, a specific use case, or what category, is it the dev tool, or is it a, you know, maybe end user facing tool? Like, where do you see the greatest opportunities? I'll kick it off with Alec maybe, and then Karen, I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, that's really excellent question. There's lots of things there. It'd be kind of hard to pare it down, but the best way I could probably do that is I personally, obviously crypto, you know, is finance. But, you know, I've always been really curious about the non-financial use cases, kind of with Valist, like just, hey, and I think HackFS is one of the best places to experiment with those kinds of things because, you know, as Vuk was saying as well, like it's very oriented around certain other use cases that are possible now. With these tools. And so, yeah, I would just say, yeah, like I'm personally really curious about how we can integrate this infrastructure in more parts of our lives. That's kind of what we're trying to do, software distribution, and kind of fix those problems. But also another thing is it's wallets are still hard to like, that's still like, I mean, that you would think that after all this time, it still would be as easy to, you know, basically, they're still not at the point where if you can ask your grandma to set it up, then they need to be at that point for us to really hit scale. So I think that's still an important problem that will probably take a long time to still figure out, but there should be lots of teams trying to. And there's there's lots of great wallets out there. Not you know, throwing shade or anything. I love a lot of these wallets. It's just you know, self-custodizing and stuff like that. It's hard. So yeah.
Thanks, Alec. And then Karen, what are the biggest opportunities in your
As a shameless plug for HackFS, so obviously I'm excited about no-code solutions for building applications in Web3, and so it opens up opportunities not only devs but like any other non-dev users who is interested in getting onboarded to Web3 to be a builder in Web3. And other than that, I'm really interested in the field, in the potential in developing a more efficient market in matching talent with positions, especially within DAOs. Because I think now I don't see any, I think we're still relying on really traditional Web2 solutions for figuring out the matching between talent and contributors and any positions or opportunities within the Web3 space.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much. I think I love this point around, even if it was a shameless plug, I'll still take it. I think, you know, it's almost like a meta dev tool, right? Where you're not we're not even making lives easier for developers, but you're turning everyone into a developer and then making their lives easier, which I love, because I'm trying to get as many people into the space as builders. And if we can remove many roadblocks there, some of which might be on the engineering side, then that's awesome. Cool. I want to thank all of you. We're kind of at time for joining this panel and kind of sharing your insights. I learned a ton, and I hope you took some of the fears maybe of people and shone some light on the great opportunities behind that follow after a hackathon. All of you, like, best of luck with what you're building. And once again, right, like we're Protocol Labs is still here to support you guys, right? Like even after the hackathon. And it's super great to hear, Alec, that you're getting some great advice from Juan. And yeah, that's just awesome, right? So like let's continue to talk and work together, and we want to help you succeed. And I'm super happy that you started in a hackathon and now look at you. That's really, really cool. Like super glad to see that, and thank you so much for your time. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Cheers. Pleasure's ours. Have a good one, everyone.